Just give me 1 second here. And we are recording the session. All right, so hello and welcome to today's web panel discussion, Localization and Internationalization at Twitter and Pinterest. The event is hosted by Net Translators, and I'm super excited to have Silvia Oviedo Lopez with us. Silvia, I'll let you introduce yourself in a second. Silvia is with Pinterest. And then we have Matt Winfield with us. Matt's with Twitter. And then my name is Chris Ralph. I work for, or I own Boulder SEO Marketing. That said, Silvia, I'm going to let you introduce yourself real quick. What do you do at Pinterest?
Hello everyone, my name is Silvia. I work at Pinterest and where I manage international product and operations. I joined Pinterest 9 months ago to run their localization team, and ever since my role has been expanded to cover more not only localization but also internationalization and how we think about products in our global landscape.
Awesome. Matt, tell us what you do.
Sure. So I'm based in San Francisco and work at Twitter, and I lead the consumer product localization team. So we work on all the consumer-facing products, Twitter.com to all the mobile apps. But our larger team also does work on marketing material, advertising and revenue, products, and things like that.
Cool. Thanks a lot. David, you guys are the hosts. What do you do at Net Translators?
I've been with Net Translators about almost 10 years. Where I was project manager, senior localization project manager, and now I'm the director of strategic operations. My position essentially is to support the sales team in bridging between customer needs and the operations.
All right, awesome. Well, let's get started. So we'll have 3 topics that we're going to try to tackle today. Topic 1, localization strategy for social networks. Topic 2 will be handling content, and then sort of a hot topic, crowdsourcing and community translations. Let me jump to the first topic. All right, I think I'm gonna ask Silvia to address this question first. Silvia, how does translation and localization for social networks differ from conventional industries?
So thanks for that question. To start, I think that, let me clarify our position from Pinterest. We don't really think of ourselves as a social network. We think of ourselves more as a discovery and planning tool. So that being said, I think we could be in the bucket of the social network approach to localization. I feel that in the recent years, a lot of companies have tried to tackle localization from a very agile approach, and that's something that we have been doing. That, I would say, makes us different from other more conventional products. In that sense, I think that when I joined Pinterest and I tried to decide what's the right approach for us, what fits from a development standpoint, from a product standpoint, and from a localization standpoint, I looked very closely into what the development culture was like at Pinterest. Do we move fast? Are we on a set schedule? Are we very agile? And what I noticed here is that things move really quickly. We want to ship products quickly, and we want to iterate a lot. So trying to find a very agile approach to localization was key for us to help us move very quickly. And actually, thanks to that, we managed to support the scale of Pinterest. We have grown a lot in the past year. We have made Pinterest available in 30 languages.
Wow.
So for us, adapting and being very quick was one of the main goals and challenges. I don't know if you want me to get into how we get there, or should we leave that for a later question?
Let's leave that for a later question. Quick question: How many people are on your team currently on Pinterest localization internationalization team?
right now we have, it's myself, an international project manager, and then we work with an extended team of freelancers, which is around 100 people.
Wow, amazing. All right, hey Matt, Twitter, what's your position on this question?
Yeah, so I can really speak mostly to just our approach. I would definitely echo what Sylvia mentioned in terms of the need for speed and quick turnaround. That's something that is a constant priority for us, and it's always a challenge. I think one thing that makes our model a little bit unique at Twitter is our sort of community model. So the vast majority of our product translation is done by volunteers who are also Twitter users. And so one benefit that provides us is, one, it offers a scale that we can operate at, and also these are people who are both passionate and very familiar with the product that they're localizing, and so we find that the quality is sort of more on par, sort of in the voice that maybe sort of captures the core product experience, and so that's a big benefit for us.
Yeah, and actually we're going to talk specifically about crowdsourcing. I had some interactions with translators out there, so that's a pretty hot topic I'd like to address specifically. Great. David, do you have a question?
Yeah, I want to start with Matt. How do you at Twitter and Sylvia at Pinterest choose the top markets that you're going to go after? Is this something that's done because of market demand, or do you specifically target certain markets?
That's a great question, and it's definitely something that's evolved over time. At the time when Twitter was being sort of localized and offered in languages other than English, I wasn't on the team, so I can't really speak to the cross-functional decision-making that happened then. In the more sort of like present day, like the last year or so, it's a mix between prioritizing and really putting resources into markets and languages where we have a very large and robust user base to make sure that those populations remain healthy. But at the same time, we're often looking at sort of potential markets that we haven't tapped into that have a lot of internet users, whether they be mobile or web or both. And so it's sort of a constant balancing act that we're doing. We're obviously trying to support as many languages as possible, but we also want to do so while remaining a high level of quality. So we're sort of strategic and try to sort of choose those battles carefully.
Sylvia?
So, yeah, so
I know you've only been there 9 months, but perhaps you could shed some light on this.
Oh, yeah. So, I mean, here 9 months are like 9 years. So, basically, I would echo what David has said. So, when looking at where should I expand, I think this is a question that every business needs to answer differently. And I've always liked the reference to a matrix of opportunity where you look at all the metrics that you care about, what's the opportunity in that market, and based on that you make a decision. I think that for companies such as Twitter or Pinterest, like we really want to go big, and as David says, as Matt says, we want to cover as many languages as possible, but we also need to be thoughtful about it because when you choose to localize into any language, you really need to make sure you have a long-term plan to support that language. Because in my experience, I have seen many companies trying to expand very quickly, and then they are pulling out languages like 1-2 years afterwards, and I don't think that's a great experience. I always like to say that all of our languages are created equal, so in that sense, I think we put the same amount of effort to achieve great quality in all of our languages. However, not all the content gets translated into all the languages. So we pick our battles, and we target specific actions to certain markets, and that means the translation of the content does only happen into certain languages. That said, for us, offering our basic product suite is key. So that means web, and mobile apps. That's something that needs to be available in all of our languages.
Absolutely. And actually, hey guys, I think I'm going to do a quick poll. I'd like to know who we have with us today. So let me launch that poll real quick. If you could just leave it up for like 10 seconds maybe. Are you on the customer side, vendor side, freelance, linguist, translator, analyst, consultant, or something else? All right, I'm going to give it another probably 5 seconds. We had close to 200 people actually sign up for this presentation, and we are recording this session, so everybody that has signed up will receive the link to the recording, hopefully by early next week. And I'm going to close the poll right now. And also I would like to invite you, if you have questions for Sylvia, Matt, David, myself, please submit them through the question or the chat interface, and we'll get to those at the end of the presentation. I'm going to close the poll, and I will share the results. So as you can see, but well, 41% customer side. We have some vendors with us today, linguists, 70%, analysts, about 5%, 7% others. All right, that said, Matt, I have a question for you, and you can keep it short. Tell us more about, have you built a localization team, or how was it for you when you joined Twitter? What was your experience getting to a fast-moving localization, internationalization team?
Yeah, that's actually a really, it's a good question specifically for Twitter, because when I joined the company not on the localization team, the localization team was structured in a very different way and sort of reflected where the company was at that time. So there were we had sort of our top-tier languages that we were focusing on, and we had in-house linguists for each of those languages who were managing both translation and localization for those markets. And so as the company grew, that model didn't really look like it was going to be able to scale well, and so we sort of the team modified the approach, and now we have we only have in-house linguists for very specific markets. And we're sort of a little bit more diversified in that way. So what's happened, or one thing that's sort of become, or started to grow recently on our team is, historically we were only focusing on product translation, so UI, help center content a little bit. And so what's happened is, as the company has grown, we're now sort of managing two distinct kinds of content. So one is advertising products and UI and marketing materials, and then also a lot of long-form content for blogs, case studies for microsites and things like that. And so what's happened is we're really needing to expand our skill set as a department, and also trying to beef up expertise in those areas so that we can deliver as good quality as possible. So that's sort of an interesting challenge that's arisen on our team in the last, I would say, like year or two.
Awesome, awesome. Sylvia.
So for us, basically, the localization team was a team of one for a while. When I joined, there was no one actively working on localization. Fortunately, we had two things that I can see. There had been an international PM for a while who got the ball rolling and started thinking about, hey, we really need to become more international. So we had a few languages available, but we weren't thinking about it as a priority. The second thing we had was a team of engineers that understood international, and that helped us get set up and get a great process that enables us to move really quickly. So I think that was the foundation for us. So having backend engineers who really can help you spread that culture and get all the right pieces in place, I think it's key to start. And then what at some point I had to make the decision of whether we were going to have an in-house model or an externalized model. Since we are starting, I think having an external or outsourced model helps you move faster and understand what are the needs of your business. I mean, we haven't been actively localizing for more than 1 year, so we still are trying to understand what's the right fit for us. But by having this this outsourced model, it helped us scale very quickly. So when we moved from like 8 languages to 20 languages to 30 languages, we could add more project managers to support that quickly. And instead of having in-house linguists for each of the top-tier markets, which is an approach that can make sense for big companies that get a lot of content for that type of position, what we did was to engage with freelancers who we could trust to have that mission and make sure that our content is completely on brand. We are lucky to have a writing team who's incredibly involved in international and is very involved in working with this linguistic lead for each language to make sure that all the translations are on brand and are the highest quality.
Cool. Cool. And David, if you want to bundle the next 2 questions into one, we're already a little bit behind on time.
All right. Well, the previous question actually ties in with what I wanted to ask about the culturalization aspects. Obviously, social media has an entirely different branding issue in terms of how you deal with the culturalization. So, first, Matt, how you guys do that over at over at Twitter?
Could you clarify a little bit about what you mean exactly by culturalization? I want to make sure that I...
Well, certainly. So, you know, if we're talking about traditional localization of a UI, so a UI that's intended for a highly technical audience, so, you know, the culturalization issues are minimized. But when you're talking about social media, and the success of social media really rests on the acceptance in that market. So you're obviously going to be focusing a lot more on cultural issues in order to gain acceptance in that particular market rather than technical issues.
Definitely. Yeah, so thanks for clarifying. And that's kind of what I understood, but I just wanted to make sure before I sort of launched into an explanation. So I think, as I mentioned before, that's what sort of our community model has really helped us with a lot. Twitter as sort of like a brand or as a product has always had a somewhat unique and sort of informal or almost lighthearted, you might say fun sort of tone or sort of spirit to it. And there's a lot of effort that goes into like capturing that and keeping that consistent sort of by our copywriting team in English. And so it can be really hard to translate that in a way that's sort of honest and true to the brand. And I think the users of our platform have done an amazing job of sort of digesting and sort of interpreting that in their own native language. And so in a lot of ways, the users that are sort of providing translation for us are really sort of doing that function in an amazing way for us that I'm not sure that we would, I think would be a lot more challenging if we didn't have that passionate community to collaborate with.
Fantastic.
Cool.
And Sylvia, sort of, I just want to add another thing to that, another twist. Because you guys just started 9 months ago, were you able to address all the internationalization issues before you began the localizing for each locale? And I also would like to hear how you guys dealt with the culturalization issues.
Sure. So as I mentioned, I'm lucky that our engineers are pretty fast. So I actually didn't find a lot of internationalization issues. So all the groundwork was already done. The code was written with a certain degree of internationalization thinking approach. So I wouldn't say it was a huge problem. A lot of our engineers come from pretty global companies and had already had that experience in the past. What I did was when I started at Pinterest, one of my goals was to train engineers and product managers in what constitute localization best practices and internationalization best practices. And also another team that I also work closely with is the design team, to make sure that we are thinking about these challenges. For me, the three keys are product managers think about products in the context of a global company. Engineers and designers are able to anticipate internationalization challenges, and this reduces localization bugs and reduces also the turnaround time. So addressing this right from the start, I think, is key. There are a lot of best practices. We even have some of our initial best practices for internationalization published. So there's a lot of documentation out there. Just formatting it in a way that's useful for your company, I think it's crucial. Regarding the culturalization aspect, we do two things. As I said, our writing team works extremely closely with our linguistic leads, and that helps us develop the voice and the narrative for our international languages. Another thing that we do is, in the countries where we have local teams, we have these local teams of community and marketing managers, and country managers, partner managers, etc. Work very closely with the translation teams to make sure that the tone we have is authentic, feels relevant, and it's true to our brand.
Awesome. Thanks a lot. Let's move on to topic 2, handling content. And I think, sorry, David, if you allow me, I think I'm going to combine the first 2 questions into one, because I think that makes sense. So Matt, I'm going to throw this first at you. First, how do you decide what content to localize at a company like Twitter? I mean, I assume that there's so much content generation. And then does content for mobile apps, is it handled differently than for desktop?
Yeah, so in terms of content, in some ways we localize everything. But not really, because there's so many tweets that we don't actually we've done experimentation, and we have some tweet translation in the UI available on permalink pages and things like that. But we focus on the UI, and we basically try to localize everything. That's what we're always gunning for. As far as mobile is concerned, it comes with some unique challenges and limitations. On the one hand, and a lot of them sort of boil down to workflow in a lot of ways. Specifically for mobile apps, since the release cycle is a little bit more constrained in that you're sort of shipping an APK, there's a very hard and fast deadline for which you can have strings, like translations, completed for that release. So to Sylvia's point earlier about the need for speed, on mobile that's particularly evident, and so we need to prioritize and really focus attention on making sure that we hit that turnaround time. The other thing that we encounter with mobile is, as you might imagine, is just with a more limited real estate for the UI, oftentimes space considerations can become more pronounced. So there are often times that we need to get creative working with product and design teams to come up with solutions that will work well across different languages. So that's definitely something that's unique to the mobile content that we deal with.
Cool. And actually, Matt, how many people are on your team? The entire localization team. So
it kind of depends on where we draw the boundary. We have about, I would say, let's say 15 project managers, vendor managers, and community managers. So people working with our translation community, people working with product teams, and also people working with the vendors that we collaborate with. And then there's also an engineering team, an international engineering team that is about 6 people, roughly.
Okay. Are those all? Are they all in the U.S., or do you have teams of people around the world?
We're actually scattered a bit. So most of us are based in the headquarters in San Francisco, and then we have some team members in Dublin, Ireland, and in London, and then we have a language specialist in the Korea office in Seoul, and then also in the Tokyo office in Japan. So we're a bit scattered, but most of us are in San Francisco.
Great, cool. Sylvia, choosing content to localize, and is it different mobile versus desktop?
So in our case, I would say that we also strive for localizing 100% of the UI content and a good chunk of marketing content. So when I say a good chunk, I mean the content that's relevant for a certain market. We don't translate user-generated content, so that's something that we are not doing right now, and I feel that it's more productive in the long term to get more local users to create more content rather than translating UGC. Regarding mobile versus web, I think that what Matt said is really true in terms of the mobile cycles are very tight and very set in stone. So if you don't hit the deadline, you basically miss that train. What I think has worked very well for us is choosing the battles to fight. So we don't, we understand that we need to be very agile and we need to support a very fast release development schedule and release schedule. So something that we really focus on is doing quality checks and making sure that the translation is ready. However, at some point you need to draw the line, and if something is not 100% translated, you need to learn to say it's okay. We hit 98%, that's good enough. However, you also need to draw the line on the other side with the product teams and the development teams when things are do really need to be translated. And having that agreement can help you be more agile and ship a product that may not be absolutely perfect but can get better in subsequent releases.
Okay. Is that a decision you make, or who makes that decision when it's go time?
When it's go time for localization, it would be me. So when something is ready, however, that's an agreement that both the mobile PMs and engineering managers and I have made in the past. So we have set a set of thresholds where like certain flows need to be 100%. Other flows are okay to be at 95%, and we're good to go. So just making that agreement in the beginning can help you move faster in the future.
Great, thanks a lot. David, you have a question?
Sylvia, you mentioned a few times the agile atmosphere that you have over there. What are your strategies and best practices for handling the speed and the volume as well?
So I think one of the so Agile sometimes has bad rep because it makes you look like you didn't have a plan, like you're taking things as you go. I think actually planning ahead and then getting into Agile mode can help you move significantly faster. As I mentioned, creating commitments initially and agreeing on what can be potential volumes and forecasts of what may be coming can help you plan your localization approach in a very agile manner. So the way, I'm talking a lot about how we work internally, but I've also mentioned that we have a large team of freelance translators working with us. When you go and work with external people, you cannot just drop 500 words for tomorrow on their laps. Like, that's, I mean, sometimes you have to do it, but I've been a freelance translator in the past, and that's rude. Like, if you are doing that every time, it's kind of rude. So working with the translators to set expectations in terms of the commitment that is expected from them, and also what you can commit to, what is a reasonable SLA for both sides. Having all these agreements up front can help smooth things and smooth the process in the future.
Great. And Matt, is that similar to what you guys are doing over at Twitter?
Yeah, a lot of that does sound very similar. We have A lot of the ways that we try to move fast is by not relying on sort of one source for translation. So just sort of backup systems, and so we have our community model, and then we also work with different vendors to help us sort of fill in gaps specifically for project localization as needed. Because as Sylvia mentioned, sometimes all of a sudden 500 strings can drop from the sky and everyone needs them, the next day. I mean, that's an exaggeration, but, things come up and there's sort of ebbs and flows. And so what we try to do is make sure that we have sort of different places to go. And also, as things are coming in, even during, less busy times, we're constantly trying to have a way to prioritize things in a transparent way so that everybody is aware of what's most important at any given time, whether it be specific languages or specific platforms that we're transiting for, so that we can do the best that we can with the limited resources or bandwidth that we sometimes have. So it's often just sort of a balancing act and just sort of making the best of your available options, I would say.
Great, great. So I worked on the vendor and the customer side, and when I was on the customer side, I hated to drop, hey, here, 20, 30, whatever strings I needed tomorrow to my vendor. And then when I was on the vendor side, I hated to get those requests. David, question for you. How do you feel about that? And I'm sure you get sometimes requests like for urgent translations. How do you handle that as a vendor?
Well, I actually want to go back to what Sylvia had said about getting an SLA in place. If you even if you're not getting the heads up about it, as long as you have an SLA and resources that are dedicated to that type of content, then while it is frustrating, but if you have it in place that this is the agreement, and you have everything, your resources in place, your translators, your reviewers, your testers, the whole mechanism. So it's not the end of the world to do it like that. Frustrating as it is, but if that's the type of relationship that's needed, then that's fine.
All right, cool. And then, hey Matt, when we started talking about go ahead, Sylvia.
Yeah, so I was going to add what David said. I want to add that I don't think that it's always frustrating. So, for example, one of our commitments between the translators and ourselves is that there will be a daily drop. So I feel that's also a way for translators to make sure they have a steady amount of work that's coming every day. And I think more companies are using that model now, where you say like, hey, every day you're going to have something in between like 10 to 200 words, which is a manageable amount so we give 48 hours, so it's 24 for translation, 24 for review. But I think that having that daily commitment can help people plan their workload for the week, especially when dealing with freelancers.
Right, and just to add to that, you can also build mechanisms that automate the process. So you're not sort of like getting an email notification, and whether you're sitting at the computer or not, it really depends on your responsiveness. But if you get the systems in place and the technology is obviously available out there, then you can be a lot more responsive to these requests.
Great, cool. Hey Matt, when we connected about this web panel, you told me about your A/B testing content relevance using human evaluation. Tell us a little bit more about this project. Sure.
So there have been efforts around this at Twitter for the last few years at least, and so it's. Let me just start with one of the first ones. So one of the aspects of Twitter is sort of what we call a suggested user list. So accounts that we think might be relevant to you as a user, and oftentimes we want to have that, or all of the time we would want to have that tailored to individuals because not everyone is interested in the same people. as you would expect. And so a few years ago, we developed country-specific lists of users. So accounts that people might be interested in following more likely than others. And let's say if you lived in Mexico versus if you lived in Argentina or Japan, for example. And so something that was set up is a way for us to, as accounts were suggested or joined the platform, to sort of run them by users who lived in those countries, and to sort of vote as to whether or not this account would be of interest to someone residing in that country. And so that's just something that has been running in the background for quite some time, basically just to help develop and maintain the quality of that list of suggestions per country, which even that is like a very sort of rough approximation for tailored content, but it's better than just sort of having a generic global central, global sort of watered down version of accounts that are quote unquote internationally relevant to everyone, which, as you know, is never the case.
Yeah.
So that's something that's an example of stuff that we've done. And then in terms of A/B testing, that's a sort of a newer area, and so as with many products, they evolved over time, and basically the translation of certain terms in a product sometimes are done very literally, and sometimes that's the best approach, and sometimes, looking back, maybe it's technically correct, it's like a very good, accurate translation, but maybe doesn't do the best job of really capturing the essence of what is trying to be communicated. And so what we've started to do is, with certain product terms, see if different variants or alternate translations would resonate more with users. It might make more sense and lead to healthier behaviors and more active usage. And so that's just something that we've only started to do recently to see how we can improve the international user experience.
Cool. So this is something Pinterest is involved in?
So for the moment, we haven't used the community to do this type of project, but definitely it's something that may happen in the future. I think it's really interesting, and I think Twitter has done a great job at involving the community in this type of curation.
Mm-hmm. Okay, cool.
One thing that I would just add quickly, if I can, is that it's been interesting for us, and it's definitely not easy, and it definitely takes like a lot of resources and time. So I'm hopeful that different companies and teams will be able to figure out improved ways to sort of get at some of these issues, because it's definitely something that's tricky and challenging. So I mean, it's definitely a fun area to work in. I think there's like a ways to go in it.
Oh yeah, yeah, cool. All right, topic 3. That's a little bit of a hot topic, I think. David, I'm gonna let you ask the first question.
Okay, well, I'll start with Matt. What do you identify as the risks versus the benefits of crowdsourcing? That's the first part of the question. The second part of the question is, how do you achieve the top quality for your translations? In other words, how do you onboard your volunteers? Who are your moderators? So on.
Yeah, so it's definitely a challenge, but also it's definitely a really fun area. I don't work specifically with the community, so I can only really speak in sort of general terms from collaborating with our community team. So what I can say is, I think one of the key risks is that, these are volunteers, these are people who are located all over the world. So it's not that we can, when we get that batch of hundreds of strings, that we can say, hey, we need this by Friday and it's a Tuesday or something. That's just never possible and is sort of never going to be asked. So that's definitely a risk that, this is a volunteer resource, so it's not something that we can say, hey, like, we have this deadline, we need to hit it. One of the benefits, as I mentioned before, is just sort of the quality and sort of the the flexibility that we have.
Oh, I think Matt just cut out. David, can you hear me?
I can hear you, yes.
Okay.
Matt, are you there? I think we've lost Matt.
Yeah. What do
I'm
we?
sure he'll be back in a moment.
Yeah.
Sylvia.
Sure. Should I take over?
Yeah. Why don't you
I
jump in
cannot
and tell
hear
Matt?
Tell us a little bit about what Matt was going to say.
Okay. Yeah. So actually, I have been following Twitter's. So I'm not going to talk on behalf of Matt, of course, but I have been following Twitter's approach to community translation, and I think it's a really interesting model. Something that I heard a few years ago from someone at Twitter.
Sort of offer a good quality translation. I'm sorry.
Oh, hey,
Oh,
Matt. We actually lost you.
Oh no.
Yeah.
you can continue, Matt.
Apologies. Am I clear now?
Yes, you are.
Okay. Roughly where did I get cut off?
But 30 seconds ago.
Okay. So with our community model, did you hear the benefits?
That we caught, yeah.
Okay. So there's a couple things that we do to ensure quality. One is we have volunteer moderators who approve all translations to make sure there's a consistency with vocabulary and tone and just sort of general accuracy. We also have, we do a lot of internal dog fooding. We of course have a glossary of key terms to make sure that as anyone in the community is working on strings, that if there's a key product term that's contained there, that they choose the right translation or the one that's chosen by our moderators. And we also do regular linguistic QA across all of our platforms just to sort of do a check-in for quality and things like that.
Cool. Sylvia, I think your turn.
Yeah, cool. So I think Twitter is of course really strong in terms of community translation. We all are always amazed at how well you guys have kept the model as you have scaled. I think with crowdsourcing, I like to call it community translation because in the end you are tapping into your own community. You're not giving the assets to a crowd and letting them do like whatever they want. It's more about engagement and bringing the community together and building something together. So I think there are a few misconceptions around community translation. Just to be clear, we have done some community translation at Pinterest. I think one of the biggest misconceptions is that community translation is cheaper and companies do it because they just don't want to pay professional translators. I don't think that's true. I think it's a philosophy approach, and that's something that I've heard people from Twitter say. Community is not cheaper. It's just a philosophy. It's like Mozilla does it, other companies do it, and I think it's a great way to operate as long as you are incredibly transparent with your community. As Matt said, you cannot put deadlines on a community. It's like you're building something together and you cannot really have the same relationship you have with professional translators. Of course, with professional translators, you get a set of benefits that a community won't give you. So professional translators bring the expertise and quality and a professional approach to language, while community brings like the scale and velocity to the translation. However, the moderation layers and the review layers are significantly more in a community approach. Where I see the benefit of community translation and where we have kept on involving our communities is when we try to find the right voice for Pinterest in another language. So we engage with the community for an initial assessment or how we're thinking about our voice. We have sometimes the linguists work with the community, and we have regular check-ins with our communities regarding the tone and the voice and the translations. In 4 markets, we actually use a group of volunteer translators they translated the Nordics. It was a great experience. We also involved professional translators for our final QA. I think the level of engagement and the input we got from that approach was definitely something that will make us use community translation for certain projects in the future.
Great. Great. That's awesome. Let me think. How do you achieve top-notch quality? I mean, I know Twitter. I think you get a badge if you join the community translation team. So there's like a visual representation of your achievements. So that would be the first part of my question. And then, have you developed a homemade tool to facilitate community translations, or did you get something off the shelf? I think I'm going to start with Matt.
Sure. So I'm not sure that it was, if it came across in what I was saying before about our community model, but I'm just constantly in awe of our volunteer translators and the users who contribute. They and our moderators are just, they blow me away all the time. So I just want to make sure that that's clear, because it's very much cherished at the company, and we're just amazed. There is something that was built in-house sort of for the larger set of volunteers. So there's like a basic reputation system that was built to so basically, like, if you're a volunteer translator and you're just sort of starting out, maybe you don't know sort of like the key translations for key product terms, maybe your strings have like errors or something like that, your reputation sort of in our system might be a little on the lower side of things. Whereas if some of your translations are approved by moderators and sort of end up going live and are voted on by your peers, your reputation might go up a little bit. And so that's something that we have running in the background to make it easier for our moderators to locate quicker the best quality translations to approve, to go live. So that's one thing that we do in terms of getting to quality through some sort of tooling in the back end.
Great. Sylvia.
So I'm going to answer the community translation tool first. We use something off the shelf, so we didn't build anything for the moment. I know there are some good open source initiatives to support this in case anyone is interested, but we use enterprise software for that. Regarding how we check quality, so we have always involved professional translators to do QA on our sites. That is something that we do periodically. So every app release is QA'd. The website is QA'd periodically, as we are shipping things every day. All big feature releases are QA'd pre-launch. That's something that I think gives a final touch to localization. Like, you can put a lot of money and effort in like a great tool and a great process and a great team of translators and reviewer, but if you don't do that final touch where you can see things in context, you can feel it in the actual devices and platforms that people are using every day. So basically you need to be doing linguistic QA in the wild. That's what makes the difference between a good localization and a great localization. I think for us, having the community close that feedback loop is something really useful. We have communities in several countries, and they are the first people to let us know that something is not right, something is not working. And I think being receptive to that kind of feedback can help you get better.
Absolutely. And you know, I think you guys answered our last question on this topic, quality assurance. So we can actually head over to Q&A. And actually, Sylvia, I have one more question for you. Do you think Brazil will win the World Cup this year? You're from Brazil, right?
Oh no, I'm from Spain.
Oh, you're from Spain. I
yeah,
thought you're.
Win again.
Oh. Spain again. Well, I'm actually hoping for Switzerland. I'm a Swiss and we have a really good team. Sorry about that. I thought you were from Brazil.
Yeah,
Well,
because I'm not a big fan of soccer, but like when it's World Cup time, I'm like all about soccer.
oh yeah, I'll take off the that month. That's for sure. All right. Why don't we? That said, we have a little bit time for Q&A. Why don't we get started with Adam is asking, I'm interested in hearing if and or how Twitter and Pinterest work with MLVs, multi-language vendors. How do you guys work with vendors at Twitter and Pinterest?
So I can start. We engage with individual translators. So we don't, for the moment, we haven't gone to a large MLB and manage all our localization through them. That's something that we haven't done. For the moment, that's a type of relationship that is working for us. And I mean, you never know what's going to happen 2 years from now, but for the moment it's working very well. And I really like to have that very close relationship with the people who are giving the final sign-off and being the voice of Pinterest internationally.
Matt, do you guys work with MLVs?
We do, and so all of the advertising products, that interface, that product, that's all handled by vendors, as is a lot of our sales and marketing materials and longer form content. So we work with various vendors on all those projects, and it works really well for us.
Great. Let me see. Here's are you guys using CAT tools? And then also we had a pre-submitted question. Do you use tools like internationalization tools? What kind of tools, like off-the-shelf tools, are you guys using at your respective companies? Matt, I'm going to have you answer first.
Sure. So the main tools that we use for consumer product localization is our tools that have been built in-house to help us basically detect untranslated strings and also diagnose UI issues. So we have ways to basically pseudo-localize our UIs particularly on the desktop website and things like that. And it just allows us to do more efficient QA, like LQA passes for new products and features. I mean, those are sort of like the main ones that come to mind.
Mm-hmm. Okay, cool. Sylvia, any off-the-shelf tools that you guys use?
Yeah, so we are using off-the-shelf tools for our TMS. We use a cloud-based solution. We have also some pseudo-localization in place that helps us identify issues before they are actually visible to users. And then for our QA process, we don't have a whole lot of automation in terms of like scripting, testnet, etc. But that's something that we'll definitely look into for the future.
Great, great. And then, hey, I think one of our panelists, I think, may be typing, and I can hear the clicking. If you mute, stop that. I got a comment from our audience. Let me see. Are you guys using machine translation? Sylvia, is machine translation being used at Pinterest?
Yes. Yes and no. So the UI that you're seeing is translated by humans. However, for some large volume projects where we feel that machine translation can be a good fit, we are using a service that provides machine translation that is post-edited by a crowd of translators or native speakers. So that's a really interesting approach because the turnaround time is very quick, the quality is higher, the raw output of machine translation, and I think they have a very solid model that can make a difference in the coming years. But we don't do raw machine translation.
Okay, cool. Matt, machine translation?
We're not using any that I'm aware of, although it's possible that there's something going on with other teams that I'm not aware of. The machine translation that is being used in the product is in partnership with Bing. There's some limited offering for tweet translation, so machine translation of user-generated content to help bridge the gap between users who are seeing content in a language that they don't speak. So that's the extent that I'm aware of.
Okay, cool. And actually, a follow-up question to the CAP tools. Do you provide any kind of terminology management for your crowd resources? Do you have TMs, glossaries, etc.?
Yeah, we definitely have a glossary for the whole community as they're working on stuff, and that shows up in line when they're working on a string that contains a glossary term. And translation memory we're leveraging to a lesser extent, but that's definitely room for improvement for us.
Okay. Sylvia, how's that handled at Pinterest?
So we do have our tool supports TMs and glossaries. So we have a fairly robust translation memory structure, so helps us. That's something that I think it's a priority when setting up the localization workflow, is making sure that your TMs are architected in that way that makes sense, so that you can reduce costs and be faster.
Okay, great. And I just want to quickly mention that we're always looking for cool, like interesting companies, panelists. So if somebody from the audience, if you're interested in potentially joining one of our upcoming panels, just shoot me a quick email to Chris at Boulder SEO Marketing, and we'll take it from there. That said, question for Matt. Facebook holds a patent for crowdsourced translation technology for social networks. Did Twitter have to take that into account while building their internal tools? Are you aware of that?
I am not. That's a very interesting question, and unfortunately I don't know anything about that. So I unfortunately won't be able to offer any insight there.
Okay. I've actually attended a Facebook session on that topic. It was really fascinating. And then I also attended a Twitter session on that a little bit later. It's fascinating. Let's see. Any automated tools for functionality testing? Like more technical functionality testing tools that you guys, we have a lot of questions about tools here. Matt, are you guys using any functionality testing tools?
No, we don't have any. There's functional testing that's done by a QA team, and there's also some automated stuff that's that runs, but nothing for nothing specific to localization. So no, unfortunately.
Okay, Sylvia, do you have anything to note on that question?
So in our case, our functional QAs handle globally, so we don't have specific functional QA for international. However, as I mentioned, our translators do testing on the apps and the website for all the languages, so whenever they run into a functional issue, that will get reported, but we are not proactively looking for them from our standpoint.
Great. Let me see. Question for Matt. Twitter has used machine translation to translate user content. What is the status of MT integration, and has it worked to your expectations? If so, will you expand to more languages? Can you tell us anything about that, Matt?
I didn't. What was the last part? MT? Oh, machine translation integration?
Integration, yeah.
I honestly, it's something that I'm not working on. It's sort of in. It's been sort of in a pilot phase for quite some time, so I don't know. I think it's still being assessed as to if it'll be extended further, how it's working. So, I don't really have any insight on that.
All right, maybe a follow-up web panel we can do in a year or so. Okay. Let's see. Question for Sylvia and Matt. Is good planning key to successful agile localization? I would think so. Sylvia, what's your answer?
Yes, absolutely. I think getting everyone on the same page before kicking off any project, and a project can be a 1-week project or a 6-month project, is key to make sure that things are going to work in the long term, and also having periodic check-ins, both internally and externally, to make sure that everyone is moving at the right pace in the same direction, etc.
Great. Matt?
Yeah, I think as Sylvia mentioned before, just sort of the education piece and just sort of being upfront about schedule and things like that is crucially important. And so the earlier that we collaborate with teams, the better the outcome I think we experience over and over. So that's always, it's always the way to go as far as in our experience.
Great. So we have time. We'll take one more question. We're already 1 minute over. Let me see. Who is the ultimate owner of the local language? The professional translator, the vendor you're working with, somebody signing off from corporate? I assume it's you guys. Sylvia, who owns the translated word?
So in our case, ultimately it would be me, because I own localization, so it's my responsibility to guarantee that we are providing great quality. I, however, worked with the translators to make sure they feel like they own the voice of Pinterest in their local language.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the reason why the writing team owns the voice of Pinterest in English, and they work really closely together to make sure that they feel empowered and that they feel like they can make decisions that would be within brand and will have a great impact for us. And also in the case where there are local teams, so right now we have teams in 3 countries, they would work very closely and they would have a say on what makes Pinterest relevant in that market.
Okay. Matt, who owns the translation?
That is an excellent question, and one that I'm not sure if there's a clear answer to. I think like when push comes to shove, if there was really a contentious issue, like probably somebody internally may have to make a final decision. But for, I would say, 99.9% of the time, it's really sort of a dialogue among our volunteer moderators and community managers, as well as sort of representatives from market offices. But it's mostly sort of our moderators who, and you know, they don't always agree among themselves because there can be stylistic differences and things like that. But it's usually we try to make it a conversation, and usually consensus can sort of rise to the top after some discussion.
Awesome. David, do you have one more last question for Sylvia or Matt?
Well, the thing that I was really interested in, they've already answered for me regarding the tools. I want to thank you, Chris, for another fantastic job at moderating our webinars. I want to especially thank Matt and Sylvia for their participation. I appreciate it, and I look forward to seeing you guys.
Yes, I had a blast, and I had to say it was so easy to work with all of you guys. Thank you so much, and maybe we can do a follow-up chat maybe in a year from now. We still have a lot of questions. We'll make the recording available by early next week. Thank you so much, NetTranslators, for organizing, hosting this session. Sylvia, thank you very much. Matt, thank you very, very much, and we'll talk to you all soon again. Thanks a lot, guys.
Thank you.
Hi.
Thank you very much.
Thanks. Bye-bye.